For thousands of years, humanity trusted one thing above kings, governments, and even God himself. Gold, the metal that didn't rust, didn't rot, didn't lie. Empires collapsed, currencies evaporated, but gold was eternal, or so everyone believed. But what if I told you there was a day in modern history when gold, this timeless symbol of stability, betrayed every belief people held about it? A day when world leaders looked at the gold standard, the foundation of global finance, and realized it had become a threat. A day when the system built to protect the world economy nearly tore it apart. What happened behind closed doors that forced the most powerful nation on earth to break the promise that backed every dollar in circulation? Why did the metal that was supposed to save the world instead push it to the brink? And more importantly, are we repeating the same pattern right now? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, the story you think you know about gold and the financial system you rely on every single day may look very different. Before we get to the breaking point, we need to understand how gold became more than a metal. It became a myth, a belief system, a financial religion. For most of human history, money was whatever people trusted: shells, beads, grain, cattle, but none of those were perfect. They could rot, break, or lose value. Gold, however, was different. It was rare, divisible, portable, and most importantly, it couldn't be created out of thin air. By the time of ancient Egypt, gold was already symbolic of divine power. By the Roman Empire, it was a guarantee of wealth. By the Middle Ages, it was a tool of kings. And by the 19th century, it evolved into something far more powerful: a global financial operating system. This was the gold standard. It worked like this. Currencies were just receipts. The real money, the gold itself, sat in vaults. If your country issued too much currency, people could demand gold in exchange. That responsibility forced governments to operate responsibly, or at least that was the idea. And for over a century, the gold standard appeared stable. Nations trusted it. Banks trusted it. People trusted it. But underneath the surface, cracks were forming. Because the gold standard had a flaw, one that most people didn't notice. It worked only if nations never changed. Economies never grew too quickly, and people never panicked. But people do panic. Economies do grow. Nations do change. And the moment they did, the gold standard would stop being a solution and start being a trap. The first major stress test came during World War I. Governments desperately needed money to fund the war. But under the gold standard, they couldn't print more without having the gold to back it. So what did they do? They suspended the gold standard temporarily. Became permanently. The second stress test came during the Great Depression. People didn't trust banks. They didn't trust governments. They trusted gold, so they rushed to exchange their dollars for gold, exactly what the gold standard allowed them to do. But here was the problem. If everyone tried to claim gold at once, the entire financial system would collapse. And it almost did. This forced President Franklin Roosevelt to take a step many believed was impossible: banning private ownership of gold and forcing people to surrender it to the government. But even then, that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the system's slow, inevitable unraveling. Because the next phase that would end in betrayal come after World War II. In 1944, world leaders gathered in a small town in New Hampshire called Bretton Woods to design a new global financial system. The old gold standard was too rigid, too unforgiving, but they didn't want to completely abandon gold, so they created a hybrid: the Bretton Woods system. Here's how it worked. Only the US dollar was convertible into gold. Every other currency was pegged to the dollar, and the US promised to redeem dollars for gold at a fixed rate, $1.35 per ounce. This setup created what many believed was the ultimate system: stable, predictable, and backed by the largest gold reserves on Earth, the reserves held by the United States. But this system contained a hidden time bomb. Because as Europe rebuilt, as Japan industrialized, as global trade expanded, the world needed more dollars to function. And the US, in order to supply these dollars, had to print them. More trade, more dollars, more printing. But the amount of gold? It stayed the same. If the world ever realized there were far more dollars than gold backing them, it would all fall apart. And eventually, the world did realize. By the late 1960s, countries like France, led by Charles de Gaulle, called out the obvious contradiction. They openly said the US was creating dollars out of nothing and demanded gold instead. One by one, nations began redeeming their dollars for gold. Gold flowed out of US vaults faster and faster. And faster. It became a bank run, but on a global scale. By 1971, the situation had become impossible. The US had printed so many dollars that it no longer had enough gold to redeem them at the promised rate. And then came the day gold betrayed its believers. On August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon went on national television and announced what he called a temporary measure. The United States would no longer convert dollars into gold. In that moment, the promise that had defined global finance since World War II evaporated. Gold didn't betray its believers because it changed. Gold betrayed its believers because the world changed and gold couldn't keep up. The entire global economic system had grown too big for a metal that couldn't grow with Italiano. The next morning, money as humanity had known it for thousands of years was gone. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. Currencies floated freely for the first time. Exchange rates swung wildly. Inflation surged. Oil prices skyrocketed. People felt, perhaps for the first time, that money was no longer anchored to anything. Some believed this was the start of financial freedom. Others believed it was the beginning of financial chaos. But both were partially right, because the end of gold convertibility didn't destroy the financial system. It transformed it. It created the world of floating currency as globalized capital, flows massive national debt, central bank interventions, and eventually, the digital, abstract money we use today. Gold was no longer the foundation of the system. Confidence was. That shift has defined every financial crisis since. After 1971, world leaders attempted multiple times to restore order. 1. The Smithsonian Agreement, an attempt to repeg currencies. It collapsed in months. 2. The Plaza Accord, 1985. Governments coordinated to weaken the US dollar. It worked temporarily but unleashed new volatility in world markets. 3. Inflation targeting and interest rate controls. Central banks tried to stabilize money by managing expectations, but this approach required constant intervention, constant oversight, and constant political pressure. 4. The rise of derivatives and financial engineering. When stability couldn't be found in gold, markets invented new forms of stability, often with catastrophic side effects. Each fix solved one problem but created another. Like squeezing a balloon, pressure moved but never disappeared. Now here's the part you've been waiting for. What does this story mean today? Because the patterns that killed the gold standard are repeating right now, just in digital form. 1. Debt is growing faster than the economy again. In the 1960s, the US printed more dollars than it had gold. Today, nations print more money than they have economic output. 2. Trust is being stretched to its limits. In the late 1960s, foreign nations lost faith in US gold promises. Today, people are starting to lose faith in currencies, banks, and political stability. 3. Alternative systems are rising. In the 1960s, gold seemed outdated compared to booming global trade. Today, cryptocurrencies and central bank digital currencies are challenging traditional money. 4. Inflation is back to the same cause and effect chain that broke Bretton Woods printing. Deficits, global imbalances is now back in motion. 5. The world may be approaching another closure day, not necessarily the end of the dollar or a return to gold, but a moment when governments admit the current system can't keep its promises anymore. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it does rhyme. And the rhyme is getting louder. Takeaway 1. Gold didn't fail. Systems built around gold did. Whenever humans tried to freeze a dynamic world inside a rigid financial framework, the world eventually broke free. Takeaway 2. No monetary system is permanent. Gold standards collapse. Fiat currencies inflate. Digital currencies face new threats. The only constant is change. Takeaway 3. Every crisis begins with a belief that this time is different. In 1971, leaders believed they could suspend gold temporarily. Temporary solutions are often the most permanent. We are once again pushing our financial system to the edge, printing more money than ever, accumulating more debt than ever, and trusting more promises than ever. There may come a day when a world leader announces a simple phrase like, "Nixon's a temporary measure," and once again, everything changes. If you want to understand the forces shaping your money, your future, and the next turning point in global finance, make sure you subscribe, hit like, and turn on notifications. Because the next chapter of this story hasn't been written yet, and you'll want to be here when it is.